was with the terrorists. We neutralized the terrorists that we selected to be neutralized, and thereafter, we only maintained the air defense posture. However, we were relentlessly pounded by waves after waves, night after night, by his UCAVs, by his drones, and by his other unmanned aerial systems. And that left us with no choice but to retaliate, and yet our retaliation was calibrated, it was graduated, and it was proportionate. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In the aftermath of the cowardly attacks on innocent tourists at Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir by Pakistani-sponsored terrorists on 22nd April, the Indian Navy's Carrier Battle Group, surface forces, submarines, and aviation assets were immediately deployed at sea with full combat readiness in concert with the Joint Operation Plan of the Indian Defence Forces. You may be aware that we tested and refined tactics and procedures at sea during multiple weapon firings in the Arabian Sea within 96 hours of the terrorist attack. The aim was to revalidate our crew, armament, equipment, and platform readiness to deliver various ordnance on selected targets precisely. Thereafter, our forces remained forward deployed in the Northern Arabian Sea in a dissuasive and deterrent posture with full readiness and capacity to strike select targets at sea and on land, including Karachi at time of our choosing. The forward deployment of the Indian Navy compelled Pakistani naval and air units to be in a defensive posture, mostly inside harbors or very close to the coast, which we monitored continuously. The Indian Navy maintained seamless maritime domain awareness throughout the duration and was entirely aware of the location and movement of Pakistani units. In effect, we had and continue to have good battle space transparency using our maritime domain awareness grid. As you are aware, our response has been measured, proportionate, non-escalatory, and responsible from day one. Accordingly, the calibrated approach considered all options, including the ability of the Indian Navy for offensive action from and at sea. As part of this escalation control mechanism, the application of force by the Navy was planned in a synchronized manner in coordination with the Army and Air Force, the highlight being teams from the three services working closely in an integrated manner. Along with the kinetic actions by the Indian Army and Indian Air Force, the overwhelming operational edge of Indian Navy at sea contributed towards Pakistan's urgent request for a ceasefire yesterday. As we speak, Indian Navy remains deployed at sea in a credible deterrent posture to respond decisively to any inimical action by Pakistan or Pakistan-based terrorists. Thank you. Samno Varna, Jai Hind. Now I'll hand over to Director General Military Operations for further proceedings.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the 10th of May, in the morning, even as we were getting into a huddle to wargame the events of the previous night, a routine exercise, I received a message on hotline from my counterpart in Pakistan seeking my willingness to communicate. Since our initial aim was to strike at terror camps, and all our actions in the subsequent days were in response to the intrusions and violations by the Pakistan Air Force and its army, it was decided that I would indeed speak with my counterpart. You are already aware, I've seen it being covered on national television, that my communication with the Pak DGMO was conducted at 15:35 hours yesterday and resulted in cessation of cross-border firing and air intrusions by either side with effect from 1700 hours, 10th of May, after he proposed that we cease hostilities. We also decided to further speak on the 12th of May, that's tomorrow, at 1200 hours, to discuss the modalities that would enable the longevity of this understanding. However, disappointingly, and must I add, expectedly, it took only a couple of hours for the Pakistan Army to violate these arrangements by cross-border and across the line of control firing, followed by drone intrusions across the expanse of the Western Front through last night and in the early hours of the morning today. These violations were responded to robustly and dealt with as they must be. We have earlier today sent another hotline message to my counterpart highlighting these violations of the understanding between the DGMOs on the 10th of May and our firm and clear intent to respond to these fiercely and punitively, if repeated tonight, subsequently, or later. In this regard, I must inform all of you that the Chief of Army Staff has earlier today conducted a security review and has granted full authority to our Army commanders for counter-actions in the kinetic domain in case of any violation by Pakistan. In the end, I pay my solemn homage to my 5 fallen colleagues and brothers from the armed forces and civilians who have tragically lost their lives in Operation Sindoor. Our hearts go out to the bereaved families, and we express our solidarity to them in this lifetime and beyond, at this grave juncture in their lives. Their sacrifices shall always be remembered and spoken of in glowing terms by a grateful nation. We have thus far, ladies and gentlemen, exercised, and my colleague Pramod highlighted this, immense restraint, and our actions have been focused, measured, and non-escalatory. However, any threat to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and safety of our citizens will be met with decisive force. Jai Hind.